This House will come back to order. House will come back to order. Mr. Clerk, would you ring the bell? The clerk will read a group of privileged resolutions, the caption to a group of privileged resolutions.
Congratulating Reverend Robert and Dr. Ali Irons Manley upon the grand occasion of their 50th wedding anniversary, honoring life and memory of Charles Chuck Miller, commending Bishop Aaron B. Lackey Sr. and acknowledging February 10, 2019 is the anniversary of the Temple of Prayer Family Worship Cathedral. Recognizing and commending the members of the 2019 St. Patrick's Day Parade Committee, honoring the life and memory of Reverend Abram Abe Fitzgerald Brown Sr., commending and recognizing the 25th anniversary of the 11 Black Men of Liberty County Incorporated, commending Mothers Raising Sons Incorporated, and recognizing March 26, 2019 is Mothers Raising Sons Day at the state capitol, congratulating Inspire Outreach on the grand occasion of his 20th anniversary, recognizing and honoring James Jackson Jack Hugh, a citizen of Gainesville, Georgia, recognizing and commending Chief Carol Martin of the Gainesville Police Department for her commitment to ensuring the safety of her community and its citizens, recognizing and honoring Dr. Curtis Jones upon being named the 2019 National Superintendent of the Year, congratulating and commending the Atlanta University Center Consortium on the grand occasion of its 90th anniversary, recognizing and commending Brandon Penniman on his outstanding community service, commending Megan Harris, Loganville Christian Academy's 2019 Star Student, commending Canna Dawson, Loganville High School's 2019 Star Student, commending Josh DeFeer, Victory Baptist School's 2019 Star Student, commending Ben Thompson, Walnut Grove High School's 2019 Star Student, commending Officer Olijid Yakubu, recognizing and commending Claire J. Klein on the outstanding public service, commending Officer Roger Halstead, commending Sergeant Michael Cheek, commending Officer Ethan Taffar, commending Officer Juan Lopez, recognizing and commending Trevor Lawrence of Cartersville, Georgia, honoring the life and memory of Charles Haley, Charlie Harper Jr., and for other purposes. That completes the reading of the privileged resolutions.
Is there any objection to adopting the privileged resolutions? The chair hears none, and the resolutions are adopted. We are back on the calendar. We have a supplemental local calendar. Supplemental local calendar with homestead exemption bills. 3 bills on the local calendar relate to homestead exemption and require a recorded 2/3 roll call vote for passage. If there is no objection, we will vote on the local calendar as a whole with a recorded vote. Hearing none, it is so ordered. The clerk will read the local calendar.
House Bill 272 by Representative Holcomb of the 81st, City of Chamblee. House Bill 273 by substitute by Representative Holcomb of the 81st, City of Chamblee. House Bill 462 by Representative Smith of the 70th, Coweta County.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered on the local calendar? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bills? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall these bills now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bills on the local calendar will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of the bills on the supplemental local calendar, the ayes are 155, the nays are 0. These bills, having received the requisite constitutional majority, are therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 445.
House Bill 445 by Representative Hogan of the 179th and others, to be entitled an act to amend Part 2 of Article 4, Chapter 5 of Title 12, the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to shore protection, so as to revise various provisions relative to shore protection. This bill having been referred to the Committee on Natural Resources and Environment. That committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Once again, Representative Hogan, I need to ask. This is not, there's nothing buried deep in this bill about cityhood, is there? Okay. You're not going to use any sand dunes to create a new city down there. Chair recognizes Representative Hogan to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the House. I bring before you today a very important bill to the residents up and down the coast, House Bill 445. This is something that needs to be addressed to protect our shorelines, and I'm very passionate about this bill. I've lived on St. Simon's right near the ocean, 1 block from the ocean, and I've seen a lot of changes over the years, and I'm very adamant about this bill addressing the shore protection. House Bill 445 amends the Shore Protection Act passed in 1979 to protect the sand sharing system of Georgia's barrier islands. In doing so, it protects upland property and important habitat and provides recreation. The last time anything was done with the Shore Protection Act was in 1979 by Representative Reed Harris from Brunswick and St. Simons. This amendment does the following: changes the name of permitting issue authority to the committee, Shore Protection Committee throughout, clarifies the definition of dynamic dune field to provide greater protection to the sand sharing system. Defines minor activity, redefines the definition of ordinary high water mark, excludes the law applying application to the backyards of property landward to sand dunes established by the protective shadow of a groin that is permitted by and continuously regulated by DNR. It makes clear the difference between a stable and dynamic dune. The only difference between this amendment and what passed this House unanimously last year is line 84 through 88. Mr. Chairman, that is the bill.
You have some questions if you care to yield.
I will yield.
Chair recognizes Chairman Ron Stevens to your left for a question.
Do you yield?
Yes, I yield.
Isn't it true we've been trying to get this very bill for what seems to be decades to finally get a boundary, one that's for shoreline protection that is favorable to the landowner and also favorable to the natural resources?
You are entirely correct.
Do you further yield?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative Saines to your right for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, I do.
Is it not true that that landowners in Georgia's coastal communities face some of the most heaviest regulations on their private property?
That is quite right, and pay the highest taxes too.
Is it not true that this, does the gentleman further yield?
I do.
Is it not true that this bill adequately balances the need to protect our coastal resources with the need of private property rights?
I agree with that.
Does the gentleman further yield?
Yes, I do.
Is it not true that the esteemed representative of St. Simons proper knows a little bit about the issues his constituents face for coastal real estate?
I do.
Do you further yield?
Yes, sir, for one more.
Chair recognizes Representative Kausha to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Hogan, do you yield?
Yes.
Isn't it true that lines 84 to 88 would provide an exemption for Sea Island and only Sea Island from the Shore Protection Act?
That is the only area I know has groins, and that's done to address a groin situation, and the beach renourishment done by Sea Island at their expense.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker,
No further questions.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Al Williams to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Someone left their glasses. I already got a pair. First, let me say that no one asked me to speak to this bill. I decided to speak to this bill. Some of you that were here several years ago saw me come to this well about deer dog hunting. And I just wanted to explain to some of my colleagues that I appreciate you listening to me when it comes to something that I deal with every day. And we talked about how I was not a hunter, but I respected those that wanted to hunt. What's that got to do with this bill? I won't have to invoke the Chokus rule on this bill. I don't own waterfront property, but I was born on the Midway River, so I know a little something about the waterfront. And I remember, before many of you were old enough to go to the beach by yourself, and I'd go down to Jekyll, and if anybody should be angry, it should be me, but I'm not. And when I got on Jekyll, at the intersection, I had to turn to the right, because that's where black folk had to go to the beach. To the left was all the pretty waterfront of the Atlantic Ocean. What folk didn't realize at that time, I enjoyed turning to the right because former Representative Nicky Randall's daddy had a club and a motel down there. And we had all the fun going to the right. And another part that I enjoyed was if you turned to the left, you had nothing but sunshine and dirt. But on the right, we had beautiful oak trees. And since we didn't come to the beach to get suntans, we came to enjoy the beach. So I enjoyed turning to the right. For years and years, we have debated what are we going to do about the shoreline. And I agree that we finally got a bill that everybody won't agree with, but it is a bill that will work out a lot of problems. Shoreline of Georgia changes a lot because of little things that start off the coast of Africa, and by the time they come down the passage and reach our shores, we call them hurricanes. And they will change shorelines. And that's happened many times where we live. And I asked my colleagues from other parts of Georgia that come down to enjoy the beautiful coastline. Trust me, if my constituents had a problem with this bill, Al Williams would have a problem with this bill. The folk that have to live there don't have a problem with this, except some folk that's going to have a problem with anything that happens anywhere. But like anything else, I've never, very few bills I've seen, I've had a few of my own that were perfect, but I've very seldom seen a perfect bill come out of this house. But this, I think, gives everybody something, and that's what I was concerned about. Listen, I'm in the position of some people that I'm not used to voting on the other side. But I didn't come here and promise anybody that you were always going to be happy with Al Williams. The people I try to keep happy are back in the 168. And as long as they're happy with me, I'm going to be happy with them. Because every once in a while a bill comes, it's hard to make a decision, half the people for it, half the people against it. And I always say I'm with the people. This bill is a good bill. It has some flaws, some things in it that I really don't like. But the people that live on the coast, and I live on the coast, and for the benefit of my friends at the rope and some of you in here, I have lived on the coast all my life. So when you write a bill and decide you don't have to even call my name, that's fine. So you have to deal with what I deal with. You won't know how I'm voting because you didn't ask. And please don't ask me the day of, because I don't make my mind up in 15, 20, 30 minutes. I've made my mind up to support this bill, and I'm going to support it because it's good legislation. And I'm supporting it because the homeowners and the people that live with this like this bill. Some don't, but the majority of them do. And the biggest judge of all lives on the coast of Georgia. They call voters. If they don't like this bill and we support it, you won't see me. You'll have to see me next year, but you won't see me the next year. And I'll be frank with you. Legislation like this, if you take me home because I'm on the right side, let me go home like I came here, with my dignity intact and my head held high, because I'm not going home saying anybody manipulated me and decided how Al Williams was going to vote. I was eating, maybe not high on the hog, but I was eating when I got here, and I'll be eating when I leave. And I plan on being here a little while longer. Don't let the gray fool you. I'm at my prime and just getting ready to go into the home stretch. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield the well.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Chair recognizes Representative Jeff Jones to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and members of the House. Quite often, we on the coast, representatives on the coast, and there are 6 coastal counties, we pretty much are in sync about what we believe is right for the coast. We don't always agree, certainly, and that's why we have this debate and this legislative process. And that's what's important here, is that we are all given our voice and allowed to speak. Representative Hogan referenced Representative Reed Harris, and back in the 70s when the Shore Protection Act was passed. If you've not read his book, it not only is an interesting saga about how he was able to, against insurmountable odds, to get that shore protection bill passed, which is very important in today's world about how we protect our coast. The devastation of recent hurricanes has seen the erosion of our dunes and the erosion of nature's natural protection and barriers along our coast. I had the privilege of doing an overflight of the coastal area after Matthew or Irma or whichever one of those crazy storms hit our coast. None of them have been good. Hurricanes are not good anywhere they hit, and certainly that's a given for all of us. I'm not sure that in today's environment we could pass the Shore Protection Act. Again, I urge you to read Representative Reed's book, because I learned not only about that issue and important coastal issues, but it also taught me some very important lessons about the legislative process, how to move bills through. So his book goes beyond just Shore Protection Act issues. But if he had not passed that bill, if this House had not passed that bill back in the 70s, the Georgia coast very likely would look like the Florida coast, which at one time itself was covered with marshes. You might wonder as you're driving from Georgia down into Florida along the coast that just seemingly all of a sudden, instantly, all the marshes go away. Well, there's a reason for that. It's because Florida did not have the foresight to implement laws like the Shore Protection Act to prevent those dunes and those marshes from being cleared, bulldozed, and filled in. Florida, as a result, does not have nature's protections from storms that batter our coast. We can't stop those storms, but I do believe we can help nature by protecting our natural dune system, because without it, the million-dollar homes and the high property taxes and all that people who live on the coast would not be able to do so. Those homes would not exist. So today I stand in opposition to House Bill 445. Again, it kind of pains me to do that, but my preference leading up to making that statement, I hope you'll understand that anytime we open up that Shore Protection Act, we need to be very, very careful that what we do is done in the best interests of the long-term value and importance of nature's protection of our coast. There are sections in that bill that do carve out some areas for special interest that I disagree with, but I understand, the groin has been approved. Sand renourishment is going on along Sea Island. I've toured that area, and I applaud Sea Island for making the effort, spending the money to bolster their seashores. The issue, however, is that there is that one section in this bill that does specifically carve out an exception for Sea Island. And fundamentally, I find a problem with that. To me, whatever's good along the coast is good along the coast, and that we should all follow the same rules. And it's on that basis, one of those reasons that, again, I object to 445. So again, I just caution you to think about the long-term impacts of our making bad decisions, or not as good a decisions as we might be able to make, about how we legislate the protection of our vital, beautiful coastline and the marshes for which we grow a lot of our seafood, our birds, all are flourishing and are hatched in those marshes areas. So again, I just want to urge this body, think very carefully about when we change and open up that code section. Yes, there are aspects of the current Shore Protection Act that do need to be fixed. There's a 20-foot tree rule in there from 1979 that doesn't make sense like it used to because of development, storms, and other issues, people cutting down trees. But my concern is that we are liberalizing and therefore reducing the natural protections that our sand barrier and dune system give our coast. So I will leave the well now, just urging you to vote no on 445. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. We have a minority report, and the chair recognizes Representative Kausha to deliver the minority report. 20 minutes allowed by rule.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm here to speak in opposition to this bill because I commend Representative Jeff Jones. We need to think long-term, the long-term protection of our coast and shorelines. And I yield the well for my representative, I yield the well for my first, I'll yield the rest of my time to Representative Mary Frances Williams. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Williams for the balance of the minority report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I respectfully disagree with some of the statements made by the bill sponsor, although I respect him enormously. I do agree that this bill protects some landowners, but not others. And in my opinion, it actually threatens shore protection, doesn't increase it. I've spent time on East Beach, on St. Simon's Island, on the marsh side, pretty much, and I think it's one of the most beautiful places on earth. I'm concerned about the impact of House Bill 445 on St. Simon's Island, both as a national treasure and as it relates to tourism. And I have heard from folks who live on St. Simon's Island. House Bill 445 significantly weakens the current Shore Protection Act, the purpose of which is to ensure that sand sharing system along the Georgia coast is not negatively impacted by land use decisions. Lines 52 to 54 eliminate from the Shore Protection Act the right of local governments to establish a beachfront permitting process that can address the protection of private property along the beach and ongoing concerns about sea level rise. I'm going to say that again. This bill eliminates the right of local governments on St. Simon's Island to establish their own beachfront permitting process that it can address the protection of the shoreline. It is true that these local committees do not currently exist, but does this body truly want to eliminate forever local government's ability to apply local authority that helps them make local decisions? Lines 112 through 117 would give Department of Natural Resources Commissioner, without input from the local community, the right to make decisions regarding minor activities, and these decisions would be made behind closed doors. Again, I want to say this bill would give the authority for making decisions to the DNR Commissioner without input from the local community. And I mentioned this is about minor activities. So minor activities include projects that are not so minor, such as construction of patios, decks, and the one of utmost concern to me is elevated walkways across the sand dunes. It is essential that the natural sand sharing process is not interfered with by human engineering projects that can adversely affect sand sharing. This allows the Georgia coast to adjust. A healthy sand sharing system allows Georgia coast to adjust to storms and rising sea level, and it provides vital protections for beachfront property, both public and private. Allowing Sea Island to secede from sand sharing system effectively robs St. Simon's Island sand that has accumulated off East Beach for decades. It will be washed into the Brunswick shipping channel. The need to leave the sand sharing system in place, but most importantly, we do not need to remove local control of St. Simon's Island citizens and put it in the hands of the DHR Commissioner. Mr. Speaker, I yield for questions, if there are any.
You have a question if you care to yield.
I yield.
Chair recognizes Representative Kausha to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Do you yield?
I yield.
Isn't it true that exempting properties like Sea Island could set a dangerous precedent for all of our Georgia coastline?
I believe that to be true, especially so for St. Simon's Island.
Do you further yield?
Yes, I do.
Chair recognizes Chairman Corbett to your right for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentlelady yield?
I do.
Is it not true that we have a long-standing rule based in this chamber? Do we let the local delegation determine what is best for their area?
Well, I think in some cases, yes, but not necessarily in the case of my own delegation, Cobb County.
Thank you.
You have no further questions.
I yield. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Chairman Lynn Smith for the chairman's time. By rule, that's 20 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to yield the first portion to Ron Stevens. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, for those of you that don't know, whenever you're making legislation and policy, it's good to kind of be from around the area. And I can tell you, I'm from the coast, and I've had DNR come to me a few years ago, and they would say, can you help us with this problem we got here? It's you know, we own the shoreline, and look at our map. And he folded out this map, and it was this massive zigzag that was. It was just unbelievable, and it was dependent on rested vegetation. And if you had a tree growing in your yard, and I'll just ask you, ladies and gentlemen, if you live in Cobb County or if you live in Fulton County, when you look at your plat for where your house is at, if somebody comes over in the night and cuts that tree down, does that change your plat? I'm asking you, ladies and gentlemen, to bring some sort of continuity to finally put this issue to rest and vote for most of the members of the coastal delegation, and I'll yield the well.
Chair recognizes Chairman Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good afternoon, everyone. See if we can kind of keep y'all awake a little bit before we have this vote. And I appreciate the debate that comes about this issue. I think most of us feel a little bit like we own a part of the coast, because from all over Georgia, it's where we go to rest and relax and enjoy the scenery. But I do think it is important to listen to the people in the impacted area. But before I go to that part of it, I want to address some of the concerns that were mentioned. There's something called the LIA, which is the Local Issuing Authority, that is referenced in the bill. In 40 years, a local government has never gone through the steps needed to issue an SPA permit. SPA stands for Shore Protection Act. Local governments, and by the way, Representative Hogan spent years with local governments in Glenn County. Local governments are involved now with their local ordinances. SPA permits require a letter from the local jurisdiction indicating the project is not in violation of local ordinances. The permit also requires a letter from the local jurisdiction. That has been the practice since the inception of this. Georgia DNR has a full-time staff person out of the Coastal Resource Division who is focused on working with local governments and is working with local governments now, and this is tremendously important, is working with the local governments now to design coastal resiliency plans for each coastal county. Georgia is poised to be the first state in the nation with resiliency plans for its entire coast. Minor activity. Minor activity is if you leave your property is 2 streets removed from the beach because of that 20-foot tree changing through the years. But you would be included in this minor activities. Minor means minor. It means planting a rose bush. It means putting down new sod. Anything other than that, and I kept asking this question to get reassurance. If you bring a dozer out there or something like that to start digging the land, you better believe that you're going to have to honor and go before the DNR. These decisions are not made behind closed doors. Any member of the Coastal Protection Committee, the body that issues the SPA permits, may request any project proposed as a minor activity to go through the full process. That's kind of like calling a poker hand. I mean, you get to see what they're holding and what's going on and what is most important for the coastal area. So now on to the area called the groin exemption. First of all, I want you to stop and imagine yourself at a beach going further north in Georgia. And with my family, we've been to a lot of them, and I can work a few hundred feet, hit a groin, a few more feet, hit a groin. Groin is using these groins is a practice with our Atlantic Ocean beaches. Groins are permitted by the Coastal Protection Committees, have standards that must be met, such as sand requirements and functionality requirements. In short, groins will be regulated not only by the DNR, but by the Corps of Engineers. So think about this. We have a wonderful state. I am privileged to have been all over the state, and I'll brag as much about the mountains as I will about the shore. We have a blessed state. We are good stewards of our state, and we are correcting errors if we have them, but we're moving forward. We value our environment, and we value our strong economy. To turn and tell the people in the coastal areas that they're not doing what they should be doing is maybe taking a step a little too far. The information I just gave you shows you the good stewardship that is taking place along our coast. In 2017, there was a report card that was listed. It's called the Coastal Georgia Ecosystem Report Card. The most recent year is 2017. And that pitiful coast got a B+ average. Oh my goodness. I taught school. Anybody'd be proud of that average. So stop and think. Stop and think what we're doing here. And I want to end with one last thing. And this goes to all of you who have not faced these types of debate. I'm glad we're having them because it shows the complexion of our state. But to those of you who are relatively new to debate, there's something you need to remember. You hold power in your hand when you push that button. And the power you hold is your decision as to what is going to happen. The power is like a hammer. You want to hit the nail on the head, but believe me, you do not want to hit the people on the head. So stop and think about that power and use it correctly. Thank you. I yield the well.
Previous question has been ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 445 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the passage of House Bill 445. The ayes are 113, the nays are 54. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 12.
House Bill 12 by Representative Williams, the 145th, to be entitled an act to amend Part 15 of Article 60, Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to miscellaneous provisions under the Quality Basic Education Act. This bill had been referred to the Committee on Education. That committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Representative Rick Williams to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Come before you today to present House Bill 12 to you. This was House Bill 655 last year. It passed through the House, passed through the Senate. It died on sine die. This is for the children, ladies and gentlemen. This is very important. This is putting out the signs in the schools, in public places for students, that it's not okay to be bullied, it's not okay to be abused, it's not okay to be hurt. This is encouraging children to step forward. Most of them all have a cell phone. They can call 911, they can call the 888 Georgia Cares, and this is very important. Mr. Speaker, I'll take any questions.
Well, you have to have them to take them, and you don't have any.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the
Is there any
will.
objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of House Bill 12. The ayes are 166, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 223.
House Bill 223 by Representative Dickey, the 140th, to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 14 to Title 12 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to oil or hazardous material spills or releases. This bill having referred to the Committee on Natural Resources and Environment. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Robert Dickey to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That last bill was for the children. This bill is for the farmers. But this is a bill about clarifying reporting requirements to EPD. It simply makes clear the routine, everyday farming practices and animal practices that go on every day on farms. It clarifies the reporting requirements. Federal EPD regulations changed and changed their requirements, exempting farms from these type practices, and we're only trying to align those with Georgia laws, with the federal. This bill is about gas. It's about chicken and cow release, and it's very hard to measure, but it's routine every day, and that's all this bill is trying to do, relieve hard-working farmers from unneeded federal and state regulation. It does not change an unplanned or unanticipated spill or release. That is still very much a reportable event. We're just trying to align and do away with the everyday practices on the farm. EPD environmental groups have no issues with this bill. I urge your favorable consideration. Thank you very much. Any questions?
You have a question if you care to yield.
I'll yield.
Chair recognizes Chairman Blackman to your left for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
I do.
Is this bill not intended to actually leave in place the tools that we need there with regards to farming in that environment and remove those that are no longer needed or not necessary?
Very good analysis of the bill. I think you've been reading and studying very hard on this thing. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, if no other, Mr. Speaker, if it's no other questions, I'll yield the well.
No other questions. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. And the clerk will unlock the machines. What purpose does Chairman Welch rise? He waves. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the passage of House Bill 223, the ayes are 162, the nays are 5. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 342.
House Bill 342 by Representative Dollar of the 45th and others to be entitled an act to amend Title 40 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to motor vehicles and traffic, so as to provide for the issuance of traffic citation to a vehicle owner in lieu of the individual operating the vehicle in certain instances. This bill having been referred to the Committee on Motor Vehicles, that committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Chairman Dollar to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, if a vehicle is pulled over for a vehicle infraction, these are problems with license tags, brake light out, headlight out. This will give law enforcement the ability to ticket the owner of the vehicle if they are in the car but are not operating the car. Currently, that ticket must be written to the driver of the car. So this doesn't mandate that they do it. This merely gives law enforcement the ability to do that. And that's the bill, Mr. Speaker. Happy to yield for questions.
You have questions if you care to yield.
I'll yield.
Chair recognizes Chairman Martin to your right for a question.
Chairman Dollar, yield for a question?
Yes.
I'm pulling up the bill as we're speaking, so it may be obvious, but can you tell me, does it require, if the citation is written to the owner, does it require that they record the information of the driver? I'm just thinking about these peer-to-peer rental things that are going on these days, and if that information should be recorded for insurance purposes.
I don't think this was written for the peer-to-peer type stuff. It's more for the driver services where, somebody has a service, or they call, somebody comes and picks them up, and then there's like a tail car behind them, but somebody else is driving their car, driving them home or so. This is more or less to address that issue.
Do you continue to yield?
I do.
Chair recognizes Representative Buckner to your left for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
Yes.
How would this affect someone driving a motor vehicle that has a CDL license?
Can you elaborate?
Well, CDL licenses are the license that big truck drivers have, and if they're driving a regular car and they receive some kind of moving violation, it puts points on their CDL license that causes problems. So how would this affect it, positive or negative?
Well, are you saying if they're the ones driving the car, or if they're the owner of the car?
Either one. How will it
Well,
affect
if
them?
they're the driver of a car, they're going to get the ticket now anyways. This only will say, you know, if they get pulled over, they're the owner. They can voluntarily say, I'm the owner, please write me the ticket. Here's the documentation to prove I'm the owner. They don't have to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Do you further yield?
I'll take one more, Speaker.
Chair recognizes the chairman of the committee from whence the bill came, Chairman Corbett, to your right for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
Yes.
This only covers non-moving violations. Is that not correct?
That is correct.
So they couldn't, if they were speeding, the driver still gets the ticket.
Yes.
So anyway,
This is only things related to the vehicle, like very specific problems with the tag, headlight, tail light, that kind of thing.
And if you happen to have your 16-year-old kid in the car with you driving, and that would help your insurance if they give you the ticket instead of her for a busted tail light. Is that?
That is one of the aims of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I yield the well, Speaker.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of House Bill 342, the ayes are 131, the nays are 32. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 499.
House Bill 499 by Representative Kelly, the 16th, and others to be entitled an act to amend Article 4, Chapter 3, Title 46, the official code of Georgia annotated relating to electric membership corporations and foreign electric cooperatives so as to permit the use of electric easements for broadband services. This bill has been referred to the Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Telecommunications. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes the Majority Caucus Whip, Representative Kelly, to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I bring to this body House Bill 499, which continues to build on the progress that this body has made to bring broadband to rural Georgia by simply making clear that where an electric membership cooperative has an electric easement, an easement for purposes of delivering electricity, that on those same poles, they're able to also run fiber to get broadband out into our rural communities. It's a pretty simple bill, Mr. Speaker. I'll be glad to answer any questions if there are any.
You have no questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the well and ask for this body's favorable consideration.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 499 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of House Bill 499, the ayes are 166, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 218.
House Bill 218 by Representative Williams, the 145th, to be entitled an act to amend Part 7 of Article 7 of Chapter 3, entitled 20, of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to Hope Scholarships and Grants, so as to provide for eligibility requirements to receive the Hope Scholarship as a Zell Miller Scholarship scholar relative to students who graduate from an ineligible high school or a home study program. This bill having referred to the Committee on Higher Education. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Rick Williams to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Come before you, ladies and gentlemen, for House Bill 218. This is extending the Hope Scholarship from 7 years to 10 years. We all realize that sometimes life gets in the way. Whether someone gets married, has a child, goes into the military. And this does also state that you can spend your time in the military and it doesn't affect the clock. You still have the 10 years once you're discharged to complete your education. Georgia needs to tap all of its talent, including adult learners, and provide educational opportunities in all seasons of life. This would give them an opportunity to complete their education. I ask for your favorable consideration.
You have no questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of House Bill 218, the ayes are 164, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 196.
House Bill 196 by Representative Benton of the 31st, to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 1 of Title 47 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to the general provisions relative to retirement and pensions, so as to require each public retirement system trustee to complete appropriate education applicable to his or her fiduciary duties. This bill having been referred to the Committee on Retirement. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Benton to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I present to you today House Bill 196. This deals with public retirement systems and the trustees that are appointed to serve on those systems. Each public retirement system trustee will complete appropriate education applicable to his or her fiduciary duties and obligations under the public retirement system. Each public retirement system trustee first appointed or elected on or after July 1st of this year shall complete a minimum of 8 hours of education designated to orient new public retirement system trustees in the area described. If a trustee fails to meet that requirement, within 14 months, he or she will be removed from his or her position as a trustee. Each public trust retirement system trustee who was appointed on or before July the 1st of this year, or has served 1 or more years as a public retirement system trustee, shall complete a minimum of 12 hours of continuing education every 2 years in this area. If such a trustee fails to complete such requirement within 26 months, he or she shall be removed from his or her position as a trustee. That's the bill. Mr. Speaker, I'll yield the well if there are no questions.
You have no questions.
Thank you. I yield the well.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of House Bill 196, the ayes are 152, the nays are 13. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Resolution 346. That's on the most recent supplemental calendar. House Resolution 346.
House Resolution 346 by Representative Tankersley of the 160th and others, honoring the lives of Caitlin Baggett, Morgan Bass, Emily Clark, Abby Deloach, and Catherine McKay Pittman, and dedicating a bridge in their memory. This resolution has been reported to the Committee on Transportation. That committee recommends that this resolution be adopted by substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Jan Tankersley to present the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand before you today to present House Resolution 346, the annual road and bridge naming bill. It includes all road and bridge resolutions compiled into one single bill. I was pleased to honor the lives and memory of 5 wonderful, beloved nursing students from Georgia Southern University by naming a bridge over I-16 in Bryan County, the Georgia Southern Nursing Angels Memorial Bridge. I ask for your favorable consideration as we honor all those who are listed in this bill today. If there are no questions, Mr. Speaker, I yield the well.
You have no questions.
Thank you.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this resolution now be adopted? All those in favor of the adoption of the resolution will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the adoption of House Resolution 346, the ayes are 165, the nays are 0. This resolution, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 101.
House Bill 101 by Representative Ridley of the 6th and others, to be entitled an act to amend Title 40 and Code Sections 48.5, 504.40 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to motor vehicles and watercraft and all-terrain vehicles held in inventory for resale. This bill having been referred to the Committee on Ways and Means. That committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Representative Ridley to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I got a simple bill for you. This bill right here, what we're doing, House Bill 101, we had a little issue with the definition of ATV. Now, as you know, we don't just have ATVs anymore. We also have UTVs, which are side-by-side vehicles. And there's no local ad valorem tax, inventory tax on ATVs, but there was some discrepancy and a little bit of confusion on the side-by-side or UTV. So what we done, we just did away with the definition of what it was and put it all together to where there's a little more clarification for local counties to understand that the inventory tax is not collected on ATVs. And that's what the bill does, and I'll stand for any questions.
You have no questions. You explained it crystal clear. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 101 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of House Bill 101. The ayes are 168, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 324. House Bill 324.
House Bill 324 by Representative Gravely of the 67th and others to be titled an act to amend Chapter 12 of Title 16 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to offenses against public health and morals, so as to provide for the production, manufacturing, and dispensing of low THC oil in this state. This bill having referred to the Committee on Regulated Industries. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Gravely to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House, today I rise to present to you a measure that I believe, with everything in me, will help Georgia citizens. In 2015, this body, in a bold act of courage, chose to allow patients in this state, those seeking an alternative, when there was not one. When every other option had been expelled, when every other option had been tried, this body chose to say, we're going to give these folks a chance, an opportunity. And we were able to pass House Bill 1. And that opportunity allowed Georgians with cancer, ALS, seizure disorders, multiple sclerosis, Crohn's disease, mitochondrial disease, Parkinson's, and sickle cell disease, an opportunity to get rid of their suffering.
an opportunity to treat what was not being able to be treated. The following year, in 2017, we added to that list autism, Alzheimer's, AIDS, peripheral neuropathy, Tourette syndrome, and any patient in hospice care. And in 18, we added PTSD and intractable pain. Ladies and gentlemen, these patients, many of whom I have met with, many of whom are in your districts, some of you have met with these patients, are experiencing oftentimes life-changing results. These aren't people who are seeking a recreational high. These aren't people who are seeking to use drugs, illicit drugs. These are people who have tried and failed with opioids. These are people who simply want their children to experience less seizures, a loved one to be eased in the pain of cancer, maybe a relative, a mom or a dad with Parkinson's, to enjoy a cup of coffee without shaking or being able to not hold that cup. These are people who simply want to go about their everyday lives and use an oil and an oil only. So House Bill 324 is the culmination of a study committee this past summer, after years of work, that would simply allow these patients who are allowed to possess this oil in this state, this body, this chamber, the chamber across the hall, and that office on the second floor, signed legislation that would allow them to possess an oil. That's it. And ladies and gentlemen, all they're asking is to be able to safely acquire it. Because for the last 3.5, 4 years, though they are allowed to possess it, there's nowhere to get it in this state. So many have risked their freedom to travel outside our state borders to other states where they're not allowed to buy that state's medical because they don't possess the medical card in that state. Many have had their oil shipped in. Many times they don't know where it was made. They're going simply on the description on the internet or because a friend referenced a link. Or somebody was good enough to get it for them and show up on their doorstep and say, this is what you need. But ladies and gentlemen, I think we can do better than that. I think we can provide a safe, lab-tested oil for the citizens of our state who have taken the time to legally register, who have taken the time to meet with their doctor, to sign up on our state's web portal, and to receive a card that says they're allowed to possess it. I believe we can assure them that the oil you're getting is safe. You know where it was made. You know who made it. And you know what it was made with. Just the other night, Channel 2 reported Dr. Scott Cooper, a neurologist at Northside, said that he is starting to see ER cases where people who have their card, who thought they were getting a safe oil, are showing up in the emergency room because of the ingredients in the oil. But what other option do they have, ladies and gentlemen? They can't buy it here in the state, so they're forced to break the law. They're forced to order over the internet. They're forced to blindly receive something in the mail because it's the option that they have. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to walk through this bill and give you a quick synopsis of what this bill does. And hopefully I can convince you about what this bill does not. Because there's a lot of things flying out there, a lot of rumors about what this bill does, what this bill's going to do, what this bill allows, what this bill's going to create. And I'm going to tell you, folks, it's just not true. So this bill, House Bill 324, establishes an in-state cultivation process and distribution program to give registered Georgia patients access to safe, regulated medical cannabis oil they are already allowed to legally possess with their low THC registry card. It creates an 11-member low THC license oversight board, which would be a division of the Department of Public Health to review applications and select manufacturers and distributors. It creates an Office of Low THC Oil Control, which will be a division of the Department of Public Health to help oversee and control and supervise the entire program. It establishes 5 Class 1 licenses. Those licenses allow a large company to grow, process, and manufacture cannabis oil in the state of Georgia. It also establishes 5 Class 2 licenses, which will do the same thing, allow a smaller company to grow, process, and manufacture medical cannabis oil in Georgia. The Class 2 license have a limit of 20,000 square feet for cultivation. It also establishes 10 safe access retail licenses. These licenses allow a company to distribute medical cannabis oil in Georgia to registered patients. It requires that all products undergo third-party testing, safety, and efficacy testing. It requires an approval system that tracks all plants and all products from seed to sale. I want to say that one more time. It requires an approval system that tracks all plants and all products from seed to sale. It establishes timelines to ensure that licenses are approved by January 1, 2020, and products are available to patients within 12 months from the license date. And it focuses on getting approved patients access to medicine, while also preventing products from getting to those not allowed to have it. So if you will indulge me, we'll walk through the bill. Starting on page 4 in Article 9, it just gives the new definitions of the new added terms of what dispense, license, low THC oil, safe access retail outlet tracking system provides the definitions of these new terms that will be in our code section. On page 6, this establishes the low THC licensee oversight board for the purpose of reviewing and approving applications pursuant to a competitive process for licenses issued under this article. Now, I want to tell you who's going to be on this 11-member and about to be 12 if the amendment passes on this board. This board will be comprised of the Commissioner of Public Health or his or her designee, the Commissioner of Community Affairs or his or her designee, the Chairperson of the Georgia Composite Medical Board, his or her designee, 2 members appointed by the Governor, one of whom shall be an attorney with expertise in professional licensing, 3 members appointed by the President of the Senate, one of whom shall be an individual with expertise in corporate finance, and one of whom shall be an owner of a minority business enterprise as defined by Code Section 50-5-131. And I want to thank Billy Mitchell for his work on that amendment as it came through subcommittee. There are 3 members appointed by the Speaker of the House, one of whom shall be a patient advocate, and one of whom shall be an owner of a minority business enterprise as defined in 50-5-131. If we go further down to line 226, we get into the licenses, and this explains the Class 1 license. It also explains all of the requirements that one would need to fulfill for a Class 1 license. If you'll look, there are 15 going over onto page, ending on page 10, where you will start with a Class 2 license. And again, it goes through all of the requirements, all the way down at the bottom of page 11 and over onto page 12. On page 12 at line 398, it goes into the description of a safe access retail license, the requirements that one would need to meet to obtain the license. On page 14, this is especially important because this goes into the tracking system. And it talks about how what the tracking system will be capable of. And it's tracking all, on line 468, tracking all plants, products, packages, registered patients purchase totals, waste, transfers, conversions, sales, and returns that, if practical, are linked to the unique identification numbers. It goes all the way down to 489 on what these license holders are going to be required to do, the reporting process. On line 510, it specifically states who may enter one of these retail dispensaries. No person may enter a safe access retail outlet unless he or she is an employee of a retail outlet, an employee of a licensee, or a registered patient or caregiver in possession of a valid registration card in accordance with Code Section 31-2A-18. On line 16, the patient confidence in knowing that what they're getting is safe and lab tested. If you start on line 523, it specifically states properly packaged low THC oil in compliance with the Federal Poison Prevention Packaging Act regarding child-resistant packaging and exemptions for packaging for elderly patients, and shall label low THC oil with a list of all inactive ingredients and specify identifying information including the patient's name and date of birth, the name and date of birth of the caregiver, the patient's registry identification, the chemical composition of the low THC oil, and it goes on to further explain exactly what will be in the oil. On line 17, it goes into description at the top at 559 of what a health consultation center is. These will be available for folks to get information. They will not be able to possess the oil in this center. This is simply an educational center that those can go to learn more about the product that they'll be taking. Line 563 would be the GBI oversight. Line 570 is the vaping prohibition. Many have asked, is this going to be gummies? Is it going to be just the oil form? Is there going to be vaping allowed? There is a vaping prohibition. It will not be allowed or tolerated under this law. The on-demand access at line 578 of the GBI. Line 587 says low THC oil shall be analyzed for potency, foreign matter, microbial presence, pesticides, heavy metals, and residue solvents. The department shall establish limits for each item tested to verify that such low THC oils meet the requirements of this article. These facilities will be open at any time for inspection by GBI. Line 599 goes into the felony prohibition, followed by the HIPAA, outlined by the HIPAA requirements. The revocation process, if one shall lose a license, is on 625. And then many have asked about the Department of Agriculture prohibition. We were told early on to not include the Department of Agriculture. That was urged to us by those in the department. And then they asked us also to create a seed exemption. That's on the last page of 20. And before we take questions, I want to make sure that if there's any question in anybody's mind, I want you to follow with me on section 2, which is page 2 of the bill, line 26. The Georgia General Assembly finds that the establishment of the low THC oil patient registry in 2015 allows Georgia patients to possess low THC oil, but provides no way to access low THC oil. The General Assembly finds that thousands of Georgians have serious medical conditions that can be improved by the medically approved use of cannabis, and that the law should not stand between them and treatment necessary for life and health. The General Assembly finds that the purpose of this act is to allow the legitimate use of medical cannabis for health care, including palliative care. The General Assembly finds that this act does not in any way diminish this state's strong public policy and laws against illegal drug use, nor should it be deemed in any manner to advocate, authorize, promote, or legally or socially accept the use of marijuana for children or adults for any non-medical use. I will end by saying, before we go for questions, the bill has been endorsed by Leading Age Georgia, which is an organization of 170 faith-based organizations that serve older adults, the National Multiple Sclerosis Society, Dr. Larry Toon at Emory Neurology, who specializes in Alzheimer's, Dr. Ben Thrower at Shepherd Center, neurologist, Dr. Oliver Glass, a geriatric psychiatrist at Emory, Austell Police Chief Bob Sterrett, and Americans for Prosperity, those which you should have received an email on today. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not asking for this state to endeavor for anything more than to get the people in this state, those who are registered, a safe oil. No more, no less. I'm not expanding the diagnosis list. We're not raising or lowering the THC levels. We're simply trying to accomplish one thing and one thing only. That is that the patients in our state, both young and old, those suffering with seizures, those having to deal with the effects of Alzheimer's, dementia, cancer, peripheral neuropathy, sickle cell anemia, you name any one of the 16 diagnoses on this list, that they may have the assurance and the confidence that they can possess or access an oil that we have said they are allowed to use. That is all this bill does, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Speaker, at this time I will yield for questions, should there be any. No?
Do you yield for questions?
Yes, sir, I'll yield.
Chair recognizes Representative Stovall to your left for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, ma'am, to my friend I do.
Yes, I have a question and maybe I missed it. I really appreciate all the work that you and the committee members have done on this bill. When it comes down to the growers, is it addressed in this bill or another bill about the land grant universities? And I don't know if this is similar to that or it's not the same as what we're talking about here.
That is not addressed, and that is a good question. It's been asked multiple times. Why can't the University of Georgia do this? Or could we look at maybe the medical school in Augusta or Emory?
Fort Valley.
Ladies and gentlemen, the university system cannot work with this. Now, they are allowed recently to work with hemp if they choose, because there's now a federal pathway. The President signed the Farm Act, which allowed for the cultivation of hemp. Our state also, and that bill, I believe, requires the states where universities would participate, their state has to pass legislation that would be in accordance to the Federal Farm Act. We don't have that at the federal level in dealing with low THC medical cannabis oil. Okay. So if the feds were to change that and something like the Federal Farm Act would permit it, then our state could then act in whatever measure or whatever way it deems that it necessary, and then the universities at that time could explore opportunities that they might want to do.
Does the gentleman further yield?
I do.
On the economic side, what new jobs would be created from this new opportunity?
Well, the jobs that would be created is those who obtain licenses would have to hire employees to work within these facilities. You would also have to hire employees rather from a medical background, a science research background, a biology background, those that have the expertise in the extraction and cultivation process. You would also have an opportunity for economic development in the retail centers. Those who would want to have a retail center would have to have employees that would know about the product, be able to answer questions from patients that were coming in to discuss the product or potentially buy the product. So there are a multitude of economic development opportunities. I've not really highlighted that in this bill because my purpose is, no matter how we do it, my purpose in this bill is to ensure that the citizens of this state who are legally registered with a registry card have safe access to lab-tested oil that would affect their diagnosis. But it's a good question. Thank you.
Do you further yield?
Yes, sir, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Chairman Knight to your right for a question.
Yes, sir.
Gentleman yield.
Yes, sir.
First of all, I appreciate putting the provision in there with the oversight when we put in the drug oversight in there. And as you went through, could you tell me about a safe access retail? A little more definition there.
A safe that's on line 399, which the department shall issue 10 safe access retail licenses. A safe access retail license shall be authorized to operate up to 2 safe access retail outlets to make low THC oil available to registered patients on a retail basis. There will not be growing or cultivation in these facilities. They will be simply retail facilities only. In that, there is also a 3,000 foot restriction. If you look on line 542, it says no licensee shall operate in any location, whether for cultivation, harvesting, and processing of marijuana, or for processing, manufacturing, packaging, or distributing low THC oil within a 3,000 foot radius measured from the property boundary to the property boundary of a public or private school, an early care or educational program as defined in Code Section 21-1A-2, or a church, synagogue, or other place of public religious worship in existence prior to the date of the licensure or such licensee by the department. So these are simply retail outlets.
And I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
I guess my question, and if the gentleman will further yield,
yes, sir,
is I like the oversight, but in this country and in this state, our medicine has traditionally been a strict process to make sure, again, some of the things that you've mentioned here, that it's correct. We know the dosage. We know all of those things. It's very, very heavy regulated for safety. It would just be nice to know that we could maybe put that back up under, or maybe moving forward under a pharmacy type, where we already have that strong regulation in place. And again, I think you made a good step in putting this in, but I wonder if the gentleman, as we go forward, may be interested in trying to do that, since it is a medicine.
Absolutely, and that's a great question. You'll see an amendment that was passed out, and this was something we did talk about in the subcommittee of should we allow just pharmacies to be the retail centers. The bill specifies that we would only have a max of 60 across the state. If pharmacies were to come online, that could put it up over 150, possibly 200 retail centers. And the pharmacy regulations aren't as stringent as the regulations for a retail outlet in the bill. However, to your point, Dennis Throtner Sr., who is now the Director of Drugs and Narcotics, specifically asked if he could have a spot on the board or work in some way so that they could possibly oversee going to these facilities just like they inspect the pharmacies. But we are still in talks with the Pharmacy Association to see what type of path we could work together.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Mr. Speaker, I'll yield for one more question.
Chair recognizes Representative Gullett to your right for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Isn't it true that one of the biggest concerns, probably that we've all heard, is that this opens the door to recreational use?
That is one of the concerns that I have heard. Yes, sir.
Do you further yield?
Yes, sir.
Isn't it true that once the bill was released, that many of the pro-recreational crowd, they were so upset that they created a movement called Gravely Injustice because they believe that you set the recreational movement back years?
That the gentleman knows of which he speaks. That is correct.
Thank you for this bill.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I know there are others that wish to speak to the bill. I would like to say this, in working on this bill, Dean Smyrie has been a a constant source of encouragement, and I look forward to continuing to work with him. I know there were some amendments that we were unable to get onto the bill, but as we move forward, he has assured me that amendments would come in a timely manner, and I would look forward to continuing to work with you as we move forward to get access for our patients here in the state of Georgia. Mr. Speaker, I yield the will and would ask for your favorable consideration on House Bill 324.
We have others who wish to be heard. I would remind the body that the Rules Committee has limited debate to 1 hour. The chair will allocate that 30 minutes to each side. Chair recognizes the Dean of the House, Chairman Smyrie, to speak to the bill.
Mr. Speaker and ladies and gentlemen of the House, I'm very reluctant to come to the well on this bill, but I come today with sort of a heavy heart. I remember when Alan Peake, former state representative Peake, several years ago, he had the Haley's Hope Act in 2015, and he came to see me and he asked me to sign it. And we went back and forth, and I ultimately didn't sign it. And then, of course, we passed it. I voted for it. And in his comments, he stated this: I may appear an unusual champion of this bill, but to me, it is obvious a demonstration of a commitment to improving the quality of life for our citizens, unquote. When Representative Gravely came to me this session, I thought long and hard again, and I consented to do it. And I'm glad I did, because so many people are going to be affected by this legislation in a very, very good way. I know this is a divided issue, and I understand that. But for me, this is the right thing to do. You know, I don't have my phone with me. I left it on my desk. But one of my constituents texted me. No, she gave me the right one. And I respect this lady immensely for, y'all know my favorite saying, if you ever see a turtle sitting on a fence post, you know that he and she didn't get that by themselves. Somebody helped put them there. And this lady helped put me where I am. And she wrote me, and then I called her. And she said, what is wrong with House Bill 324? I said, well, not anything. We just postponed it, and we're going to get it back on the calendar, but we, as we do up here, we consider amendments and trying to be as inclusive as possible in that respect, in that regard. And then she said, well, I sure hope you would vote on it, because I have a family member that is in need. End of story for me. And then I heard from some others during the course of the day. And so I just came to, you've gone through the bill. I understand the nuances of it. And I'm not going to speak to that part of it. I'm just here to say I'm I just want to explain where I am. And I just believe this is a good thing to do for these families. And when Peak had it earlier, when we first started this medical cannabis for therapeutic and for medical purposes, I just really saw how it affected families. And so that's why I signed it, Representative, because it's in that spirit that I want to be a part of this one. It's not a part of the first one. I voted yes, but I want to be a part of this one. Now, there was an amendment that was proposed, and I got it on yesterday, and we asked the Speaker in this body to postpone and to send this bill back to rules, which we did. And we could not agree on the amendment. And I would prefer if the amendment was in it. I said that publicly. I would prefer it. But because that is not in it, and knowing how the political process works, just because it's not in it means I'm going to be against it. I'm not going to be against it. And I'm for it. And I would prefer it. And I just tell you, the Representative Mitchell from the ADA, thank you for your work and putting the amendment in it that dealt with specificity on minorities and minority participation and that part being in the bill. I think that adds strength to the bill and it adds a sense of equity. And I thank you for it. There are others that had components of the bill that I hope that was in here. The gentleman from Macon, Chairman, I hope to continue to work with you as it relates to this issue. The gentleman from Albany, Representative Dukes, same way, and I appreciate your comments. And the gentleman from DeKalb, Representative Jones, they all brought us language, and I met with you this morning to try to work that out. With that being said, it didn't work out, but I believe you when you tell me you gave me your word that we will continue to try to modify, try to perfect, try to make this bill all that it is. And I take that for your word. And we may not get everything we need in it, but at this juncture, you know, and I wondered today whether or not we were going to bring this bill up on crossover day. And so when the decision was made and we were called the rules that we were bringing it back with the amendment on the narcotics, adding that to the board, then I agreed with that amendment. I'm opposed to any other amendments where you can't bring an amendment as a modified structure. But I just wanted to come and just give you these few comments, and I will be voting for the amendment, and then I will be voting for the bill. And I would ask everybody to do what you always do, is give it thought and give it consideration. And I've learned a long time ago, to never get angry with anybody about the way they vote, because the same person that you may not like on Monday, that is going to be a Tuesday. So those of y'all who are new, remember that philosophy. We vote every day. So don't get so caught up on Monday's vote, because Tuesday is on the way. And the person that you may not like on Monday, you might love on Tuesday. So with that, Mr. Speaker, thank you for allowing me to take a moment to explain my position and why I intended on voting yes for House Bill 324. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to try to
You have a couple of questions if you care to answer them.
I will.
Chair recognizes Representative Al Williams to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the gentleman yield?
I yield.
To the Dean, thank you so much. as you've done it as only you can do it, but is it not true that two people that we know of who suffer with Parkinson's could possibly benefit in the person of Senator Johnny Isaacson and former Representative Linmore James? Is that not true?
The gentleman knows of which he speaks. That is correct.
Will the gentleman further yield?
I yield.
Is it not also so that about 7,000 sufferers with sickle cell may well find some relief as a result of this bill?
That is correct.
Thank you. No further questions.
This bill has a broad bandwidth. I mean, it's applicable to anybody, and anybody can use it. I mean, so that's one of the main reasons. You know, I've done a 180 on this type of issue, but I'm glad I am where I am now. I'm happy with where I am now, because I said, I'm not going to get involved in that. I'm not going to touch that, but I'm glad I signed it, because I think I'm doing the right thing. Mr. Speaker.
Do you yield for further questions?
One more, that'll be it, Mr. Speaker.
Chair
We're on the time
recognizes
limit.
Chairman Beverly to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, I yield.
Is it not true that we offered up an amendment today that we have a firm commitment from the other side to continue to work, that we have licensing that is inclusive of the demographics in the state of Georgia?
That is correct. When the gentleman and I spoke late in the evening and early this morning, and as we met during the course of the day, my intent was to have that amendment, ask the rule chairman to incorporate that in the rules committee and possibly come with a committee substitute. But the fact that did not work out, and we're in the posture now that being that the bill is in a modified structure posture, we're not able to present an amendment. But I had, as I told you, I was going to talk to the chair of the Rules Committee and the author of the bill to try to get that amendment attached, either as a standalone or either turn the bill into a committee substitute. And of course, that did not occur. But I would have preferred to have it. Yes.
Thank you, Dean. Do you yield for one more
yes,
question?
Yes, sir.
Is it further not true that as we think about creating a new asset class in the state of Georgia to make sure that the citizens of Georgia get what they need in order to deal with their ailments, that we keep in mind that we want to be inclusive in the licensing of all bills, and that we have redress if inclusiveness is not included?
I agree with the gentleman. But one of the aspects of it, and the gentleman is correct, but the flip side of it, and another extension of it, with the gentleman on the 88th, what he had as an amendment in the bill that was, I think, perfected either in the subcommittee or the full committee, was an amendment that dealt directly with minority business and minority enterprise. And that one or two members of anybody that had the licensure, they were required to extend business opportunity to those that are in the minority enterprise population. So with that, but I agree with the gentleman from the aspect of it. And again, I will say publicly, I would have preferred that it's in it, but it's not there. We are where we are. And the fact that it's not in there has not diminished my support of 324. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield the well.
Chair recognizes Representative Newton to speak to the bill.
Good afternoon, colleagues. I've appreciated the opportunity to work with the author on this bill after I became convinced of his insistence that this is a medical use only. This is not a pathway, not intended as any way a pathway to recreational use, which we're just now finding a lot of the medical harm that's occurring in some other states. And so as we work together on that, I've appreciated the author being willing to take some considerations with a medical physician, one who's seen both the advantages of a medication like opioids in the right circumstances, but also the downside of misuse and abuse of that substance. Same substance, sometimes priceless, sometimes very dangerous. I was originally skeptical when I came a few years ago when we were adding conditions and the science, what I would call the quality of the science. I'm an evidence-based scientist in healthcare, and we would add conditions, and we were using a lot of anecdotal evidence and no case control studies, no randomized double-blind studies. Certainly I kept quiet to a good bit. I had some good conversations with Representative Peake, but at the same time, I knew I had and still have a lot to learn about the legislative process, and I'm glad to be part of it. But over these past few years, I've had the opportunity to meet some of the physicians who've personally cared for many people that have found this medication use to be extremely valuable and even life-changing. Even more than that, we've had the opportunity at this Capitol to meet one-on-one with family members, parents, caregivers. Sometimes it's, someone mentioned severe Alzheimer's dementia. We've had some caregivers of those who talked about how much better their symptoms were after receiving the card and then receiving the medication through whatever method. So meeting the families was crucial. And I began to realize there is evidence, significant evidence, that this can be a life-changing substance in the right controlled circumstances. Once again, not recreational, but in these severe, intractable circumstances where medicine has reached the end of its limits, to where modern medicine doesn't have an answer. What are these? That less than 0.1% of the Georgians have one of these registry cards now. Currently, there's things like end-stage severe cancer, the severe pain that goes along with that. For right now, the only solution is opioids, both with their benefits, but at the same time with their risks and their significant side effects. The spasms that go with severe multiple sclerosis, the tremors of severe Parkinson's, end-stage Alzheimer's dementia, and then severe intractable pain and seizures. Two things that I've just 5 minutes ago talked to a pharmacist friend of mine who has 2 nieces who are being treated, who made significant improvements even after they had been at the end of their medical abilities, even including brain surgery to try to stop, have seen significant improvements. Now, is it a miracle medicine? No, it is not a panacea. It's not an answer for everything. But in the right control circumstances, similar to opioids when you have a femur fracture, in the right circumstances, it's a very valuable medicine. So I've appreciated that. I do think it's been important that the efforts of law enforcement, who we all strongly agree that we don't want to tie the hands of law enforcement, and I was real proud to see some of the changes that were made in allowing the prohibition, complete prohibition of smoking or vaping. One of the concerns of law enforcement expressed were if there was smoking or vaping going on among several people, as long as one of them had a card, they wouldn't know whether that was the person the vaping was coming from. So I was glad to see we took a strong step in this bill to completely eliminate that, so that we kind of untied the hands of law enforcement to where they can still vigorously follow Georgia's law when it comes to recreational use or misuse of marijuana, but at the same time not confuse it with what is strictly a medical use. Certainly it'd be best to let, for the federal government, our congressional colleagues, to move this medication, this oil, from Schedule I to Schedule II. What would that allow? That would allow our universities to study it without risking their National Institute of Health grants that are funding a lot of our cancer and other research. Right now they're a little bit afraid to do much on the low THC cannabis oil because of the federal restriction. It's still a Schedule I drug. It would allow our pharmacies, I know there's a potential amendment to do that. Well, pharmacies cannot stock or dispense a Schedule I substance. Now, we'd love to think that that's going to change and that our colleagues, similar to us, are going to make some decisions in Congress. The problem is we've got families who are going to have to wait. We've got families at the end of their life with a family members with very young children having conditions. And this has been 3 or 4 years that we've been talking about it needs to be changed so we can study it. Certainly back to Haley's Hope with Representative Peake's bill a few years in the past. So I think it's important that we move forward for Georgia families. What I would say is don't force the patients and their families to wait any longer on Congress. That I'd urge you to give Georgia families and their patients a way to obtain this oil, a way to make a difference in their lives, to change their lives for the better. And in the meantime, if Congress in the future does change, we can come back and readdress maybe an alternative way. But I would encourage you to look at this strictly as a medical use with careful controls with respect to law enforcement. And I really, once again, I appreciate the sponsor of the bill being so insistent that this is a medical bill to make lives of Georgians better. And I'll yield the will, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative Collins. He waives. Chair recognizes Chairman Welch to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise this afternoon to speak
10 minutes left on
in
the
favor.
debate time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to speak in favor of this bill because I believe in the process that is our legislative process. I believe that process is one that engenders good legislation after deliberation. And we have heard from members of the minority party seeking to add amendments to the bill. And I know that the commitment of the sponsor is that he will continue to do that. The sponsor has made commitments to me that he would continue to look at the advertising sections of this bill. I rise also to provide some education to the members because I want you to be aware of 3 amendments that were proposed in the subcommittee. Those are on your desk with my card at the top. These are not proposed amendments for you to consider today. These are just for your consideration as this bill moves forward. And I hope that the sponsor will reconsider his position on some of these amendments, specifically as it moves over to the Senate, and I hope it does today. The first one dealt with exactly what Chairman Knight raised, allowing for regulation through the pharmacies. We have an opioid epidemic across this nation because they were not regulated tightly before. And then we had to pass prescription drug monitoring legislation to monitor that. And yet now we're having our Attorney General file a lawsuit to prosecute for the misrepresentations made by manufacturers of opioids in this state. You can see that this cycle moves in a direction that is not for the well-being of the state. Having pharmacies involved would help to regulate this even tighter than it currently is under the bill. And mind you, the pharmacies would be tied to and have to adhere to the same requirements as the licensees if this was added. The second section of the amendments that I had proposed in subcommittee deal with advertisement. It is a federal violation to advertise the sale of a Category 1 substance. So if it's a controlled substance Schedule 1, it is illegal under Title 21, Section 843 to advertise in any way, even specifically the internet, for the sale, use, or distribution of a Schedule 1 substance such as marijuana or the THC oil. And so I had asked for that to be the advertising section of this bill, lines 541 through 557, to be struck because it condones advertisement. It authorizes and allows for advertisement when the federal law says the exact opposite. I think that that needs to be removed from the bill through the rest of this process. And then finally, I'd also added an amendment and asked for consideration on the ownership interest of those who are seeking to a license in the state, and that those that are engaged in recreational marijuana sale or manufacture in other states would not be allowed to have a license in this state. I rise because those are, I think, significant issues that need to be resolved in the bill as it moves forward. I do appreciate that the author has spent great time and great energy on tightening this bill up as it has gone through the process, and I hope he will do so even further. It's important to know that there are only 2 patent strains of marijuana in the U.S. One is held by the United States government, and another one was just recently patented. Otherwise, all different strains of marijuana that are being grown are not patented. They can be used in other states, could be grown here in the state of Georgia. And I hope that as this bill moves forward, we will work to perfect it, improve it, but I do encourage you to vote for it because I trust that the sponsor of the bill and I trust our legislative process will work to slowly but surely make it as good of a bill as